All Our Relations is a 2018 nonfiction essay on the alarming rate of suicides amongst the youth of Indigenous people in Canada, and also young Indigenous people around the world, kind of delving into that. Tanya Talaga is a journalist working, I think, through the Toronto Star primarily. And there's a lot of this that very much reads like journalist work, very passionate, very kind of incisive, filled with, shocking, horrendous facts, which, to speak honestly as a Canadian, should not be that shocking to me. But still, every time you hear it, you cannot help but feeling shocked about communities where, far from being an aberration, a shock, suicide is all too prevalent and all too just gets kind of normalized. It's just something that's like just another option for youth whose culture has been disrupted, who have been scooped from their families, who can't be educated in their communities, do not have access to proper health care in their isolated communities that were set up to be isolated and apart from Canadian society by design, run in social services which are oriented and have the values of the white dominant society, and frankly just don't have the empathy or the experience to know what families who've gone through generations of fucking horrible abuse, residential schools, shoved off their lands, all this sort of stuff. Massive disruption that has happened to these peoples over the last hundreds of years. And are in a sea of people who don't give a fuck about them, who think that they're just past dying, and even the most well-meaning of excuse me, the most well-meaning of us are frankly ignorant, don't know their history, are puzzled why they can't just get over things, as if this stuff isn't still happening at the moment and they're not still actively in a battle with our beloved representatives, tooth and nail, to get just basic living conditions, basic recognition that they are actually people, that Canadians who deserve the basic services that I, as a white Canadian, just take for granted. The sections, I've read various little snippet reviews of people saying, like, well, the sections that were outside of Canada were only little snapshots and didn't really contribute much about the particulars of those societies. And I do think that they serve more of a purpose of contextualizing, as a Canadian, you get kind of zeroed in on just our situation and not seeing that how depressingly widespread this is, but also the opportunity that gives of, like, it's shitty all over, and there's a very systematic structural thing that is going on here that we as a Canadian society don't give a fuck about. All these children killing themselves, we don't give a fuck about all the Indigenous people who are well overrepresented in our jail system, who have much lower life expectancy, who are ill served by our healthcare system in general. Where you see a Native person passed out in the waiting room of a hospital, it's like, oh, they must just be drunk, versus, hey, if this was a white person, you might actually check on them and see if they weren't having, medical issues because why they're in the hospital. And I'm not putting myself above the people who do that, because I'm sure that I fall into my own hardwired, inculcated assumptions about Native people. I'm sure I'm I'm committing probably some of that even as I speak right now. Um, so yeah. I mean, it is a book heavy with facts. I don't know how much of that is going to stay with me, just because my brain does not work that way. Um, but I think kind of the general overall message of this book does get through. I mean, there's a message that she's got for her own people, but there's, all I can do is like, as, you know, what kind of, there's a kind of, there's more fundamental questions about like being reactive, um, sending in squads of teams to help out after seven or five or six or seven children have all killed themselves, and doing a little soundbite, and then just going back to the regular shit of not providing the actual services. I mean, there's this thing of like like this is happening in democracies, and it's like, is a democracy just set up to listen to the majority and to those at the center of power, and those who pull the purse strings, who want to put the pipelines through. And I mean, I shouldn't fool myself. Like, those pipelines are probably going to benefit me. They're going to fuel that fuel. I mean, I'm in Victoria, but that just general thing of, this is the feed industry, and it's what we're burning the planet to do, burning it all down. Putting all the wood on the fire until there's no wood left, there's no land left, there's no creatures left, and how we treat the most vulnerable, that we've made the most vulnerable and the most powerless in our society by design, says a lot about our country, says a lot about democracy, says a lot about capitalist ethos of grow, grow, grow. This is crossing over into, just read David Attenborough's book, and I'm thinking a lot about the whole just how we probably are going to have to fundamentally change, or it's going to be the apocalypse. Maybe a slow apocalypse, but we're all going to burn. We're all going to burn, or drown, or starve to death, because the system, we live in a little petri dish, and this is simply this is a sign of a part of our culture that's going to die, that is literally killing themselves, and we're next. Think about it selfishly. We actually take care of the most vulnerable. We reorient ourselves. I don't know. I'm going off into thing. This is obviously just a review for myself to just process things. I'm not gonna inflict my bullshit on anybody else on this subject matter, but I just wanted to get it out, get it into my head, get it out into my ether, whatever that is. All right, I will leave it there. Really, really a worthwhile book reading. Probably I read Thomas King, The Inconvenient Indian. Thomas King is a novelist and a satirist in the most savage kind of. He laughs to drive the knife in deeper, and that probably on the balance will affect me more, will have probably inflicted more wounds on a lot of my white fragility and privilege, just because he's savagely smiling as he's driving the knife in, whereas Tny Tlg's book is much more journalistic, fact, which is probably not going to stick here as more, but still very, very powerful work, and one that's really worth reading or listening to. I listened to it, and yeah. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.